Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood with Hegwood Law Group, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and of course our very special guest, Qiana James. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me today, Kim.
So Qiana's been on our show before, and I know her personally. So she has a company called Friendly Faces, which is really good. And but today we're going to talk about the hospital to home tips for a stress-free transition. I almost had to almost seemed like it was a little hard to say there. And Friendly Faces, I'm assuming, if I understand and what I know is correct, that do y'all help do, making transition arrangements for clients?
Yes, we work with a lot of clients when it pertains to them coming from the hospital to the home. So this is something that we do all the time and are very, very familiar with.
So I know sometimes a lot of people have a difficulty, getting that plan in place, figuring out what they need to do. We had a lady just recently call and say, they, discharged her father with no plan in place. And so, what do y'all do to help families, make sure that there is a good care plan? And if they don't have one, how do they create it?
Yeah, a lot of time it's just, okay, let's just stop, calm down, and think the situation through. Because when you think about it, most people are not planning to go to hospital unless they're planning for like some type of elective procedure or surgery. Most time it's an emergency type situation. So they didn't think this situation through. And so then they don't always know when their loved ones or themselves will be discharged. And the next thing you know, the hospital is like, well, you've got to go because it's all about the insurance. And then they're like, okay, well, what do we do now? So we intervene with a lot of families that it's a very chaotic situation and they're like having this, oh crap moment. What do we do? So we get in there and just try and calm the situation down because we have so much experience working with so many clients in this situation and so many families. We're able to come in there and really help them to think the situation through. And it's so critical because, there's a big push to lower the readmission rate. And it's the highest risk within those initial 24 to 72 hours once a client or a patient has been discharged. And it's many cases simply because they do not have a good care plan in place. And so what we can do is sit down with the families or sit down with the client themselves and talk with them. And a lot of times it may not be face to face. A lot of times this is over the phone, but talk with them about all the steps that they need to do in order to make a safe discharge and make sure that they have a plan in place. And many times we're coordinating with the social workers or the discharge planners or case managers as to what that plan in place will be.
So what happens if you've got, like a family member, like the one that called us and said, they're just, he needs he needs a wheelchair, he needs a walker, he needs something, he needs to be able to, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, and if that's happening, it's really sad if the hospital is not coordinating with them because, that's the whole job of the social workers and the case managers. That's a big part of it, and the discharge planner, because they are not supposed to make a discharge unless everything is set up. They're supposed to make a safe discharge. So it's unfortunate if that family was having that experience. So what they need to do is we need to check. My first question will be, okay, did they set you up with home health or did they set you up with hospice? And if they did, then they would need to coordinate with those in order to get equipment. If they're set up on hospice, it's really easy to get the equipment. Everything starts rolling really fast. With home health, you are going to see a delay. So we see that many times that the clients will come home without the proper equipment. And we kind of have to do these make do situations until, they can get the insurance approved to get the equipment that they need. But we definitely want to coordinate there. If they do not have or, need help finding these type of providers, we can always put them in touch. We have so many partners in the industry. We'll definitely put them in touch with them. But that's definitely what we want to find out. The equipment, we need to understand what the discharge paperwork says. What are the doctors saying you need to do? Do you need medicine? Do you need a ride to get the medicine? All of those different types of things they need to know and have in place before they leave that hospital.
Well, you're right. A lot of people, leave the hospital. They've got, prescriptions, and instructions. And so you're thinking about, if they're going home, how do we make sure that they're taking those prescriptions correctly and things like that?
Unless you just have a really savvy, and a lot of times we're dealing with seniors, unless you just have a really savvy senior, you really need oversight. So primarily it's going to fall on family or close friends. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people where they may have no family or close friends and they're just by themselves. Or, in our society, our culture, everybody's busy, everybody's working, people have kids, they may not have the time to dedicate. So somebody needs to be there to oversee, to make sure that they're following their instructions. So many times we get our clients and they may not really have a lot of family involvement. And we're trying to find out, okay, what are the instructions from the hospital? Where are your discharge papers? And they're like, oh, they didn't give me any discharge papers. Well, they always give discharge papers. We have to look around to find the discharge papers. And then there's a whole list of instructions that they don't even know about because they didn't even read it. So somebody needs to be there in place to read that, whether that's a family member, a close friend. You can hire a caregiving company and they can send a caregiver out to assist. Or some families, if you have the resources, you can hire what's called a geriatric care manager who can step in and be that middle person to coordinate amongst all disciplines. But definitely need to know, what are the instructions? Do you need your medications? Let's stop and get your medications on our way home from the hospital. And let's make sure you're following these plans, because sometimes they have special diets. They need special equipment. We don't know what their cognitive abilities are. Many seniors, when they go into the hospital, they get some form of dementia, and sometimes it's temporary. A lot of times they'll come out of it, but many times they're in the hospital and this is new and it's confusing, and they come out and they don't know what to do. They really need that guidance.
So you brought up an interesting topic there for a minute. And so, because we were talking about, coordinating care, we love our geriatric case managers because they're like the quarterback of making sure that, everybody is doing their part, or maybe I should say the coach, making sure all the players are doing what they're supposed to do, and that it's all working, in for the caregiver, to make sure that everything's working like it should. And why do you think that's so important?
It's very important. It's really not a heavily utilized resource like it should be. A lot of people don't even know that they exist. It's so important because, like I was saying before, many clients, they don't have family here, or maybe they don't have family that care, or there's a lot of issues that happened before they got older that kind of spill over. And in many cases, they have family that may care, but they're really busy. They're professionals and they have kids and they have other family members are taken care of, all types of situations. So they really don't have the time that's needed to dedicate to taking care of this loved one properly. So when those cases arise, and if you have the resources, because it's not cheap to hire a geriatric care manager, even though it's a very necessary resource. But if you do have the resources, you can hire this geriatric care manager and they can step in there and be that middle person and coordinate amongst everyone. Even with the care agency, there are some care agencies that have their own geriatric care managers. I know with us, we work with others. And many times we do the services and don't even charge just because it needs to be done. We just step in there and do whatever needs to be done. But really having a dedicated geriatric care manager is very, very good, because they come in there, they can go with them to the doctor's appointment. They can get on the phone and have case conferences with the doctors, and just really step in there and make sure that everybody, including the care agencies, the doctors, the home health, the hospice, whoever is on that care team, they can be that one person that coordinates everyone and make sure everybody is on the same page and offering the best care for the client.
So it's real important, because we're now in the holiday season, that we want to make sure that people, when the families are visiting, that they're really paying attention. We have a lot of times, the business tends to pick up sometimes during the holidays because people are home visiting their parents, or their grandparents. They're like, oh my gosh, they have declined. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So can you tell our listeners some things that families really need to pay attention to kind of help make sure they don't miss anything when they're visiting, to make sure their loved one's going to be okay when they're gone?
Yes, and this is very true. We see this every year. It's usually shortly after the holidays. Then there's an uptick in business, and it's from concerned family members who didn't see mom or dad for a while, or grandpa, grandma, or aunt or uncle. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know all this was going on. In many cases, it's because the seniors, they really love to hold on to their independence, as we probably all will when we get there. And so they're afraid to ask for help. And they're afraid to ask for help because they're afraid if I ask for help, that means I can't do it and they're going to stick me in a nursing home or something like that. When a lot of times they just need a little bit of help or guidance, but many times they just don't want to ask for that. So when they do go and visit and they're having the holidays and families are over, then they see, okay, this is a bad situation. And so things you want to look out for during the holiday season or any time that you're visiting your loved one is, what does their mobility look like? When they're getting up, are they having a hard time? Are they using a cane, a walker, one of those rollators, little scooter things? If they're not, should they be? Do they look like they're about to fall? Are they unstable? If you're visiting their house, what does their house look like? Is it a lot of clutter? A lot of seniors will have a lot of clutter in their house. Are there rugs on there? Are the rugs up where they could trip? Are there a lot of fall hazards? How do their bathrooms look? Do they have grab bars? Does it look like it might be hard for them to step in and out of that tub? What about their toilets? Are they raised? Are they having difficulty going on and off the toilet? Look in their refrigerators. What do their refrigerators look like? Do they have food? Is it expired? It would be so amazed how many clients we get. And one of the things the family want us to do is clean out. They're like, when they're not looking, clean out that refrigerator. It's full of expired food. The cabinets, expired stuff. Look at their medications. Are their medications expired? Is it evidence that they're taking their medication? When was it prescribed? How many pills do they have in that box? Are they taking it? Are they missing their medication? So it's kind of like you got to look at these things and just overall kind of judge their cognition. They seem like they're having memory issues. I always like to, when I look at seniors, I look at their eyes. There's always something about the eyes when I can kind of figure out if there's something cognitively that's going on there. So does something seem off? Because a lot of times seniors are, really smart, and some of them, we've had really professionals and they can mask it really, really good. But if you really pay attention and watch them close, you can see, okay, there's something going on. Just being intuitive and watching.
Yeah, it's really important. Sometimes it's the little details that give away a whole lot. And it's very important to ask those questions if it's appropriate to ask, those questions, if they're able to answer them and things like that, of, really paying attention. And really, I think too, offering help or, saying, just doing things that would, it's like, what, I bet, I know how much I enjoy having someone come in and clean all that dirty stuff in the house, the toilets and everything. I bet you'd like that too. It just makes me feel so good to have all that stuff done. And so can you want to try out, my girl or my company? And, I think that people would be more forthcoming if people were more helpful in what they were doing rather than critical. Yeah. And I think a lot of people tend to come across critical, and that's where a lot of seniors get their backs up, and now they're, dug in their heels because, they don't want it. My grandfather, bless his heart, was one of the most, stubborn men I ever met. So really learning how to, maneuver him to getting to do things, was really a skill, because you really had to show him how it was going to benefit him, and more so than, what it was he was going to have to, to give up. And so, but it was always fun and always a good challenge. So if you like a good mental challenge, find somebody that's really stubborn and convince them to do something. So. And
that sounds like my father. But like when we have the caregivers for him, I just say, hey, my friends are coming to hang out with you. And he's like, okay, he has no idea we're paying for caregivers to come in. Because if you tell him that somebody's coming to help him, I don't need no help.
Yeah.
We have to do little tricks.
Yeah. And so that's always good, though. So, until Qiana, I want to be able to let our listeners know how they can find you, because I know you got such a good company, and we want them to know. So, so to reach you, how do they do that?
They can go to our website, it's friendlyfaces.com. If you want to call us, we're 281-302-4138, and you can call or text us at that line, and we'll be happy to hear from you. You can look us up on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just look for Friendly Faces Senior Care.
And so, and in my office, we know exactly how to find them. So we can as well. And so, and thanks, Qiana, for being on the show, and happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.